Welcome again, everyone, to Thrive, Lead, Succeed. Our topic today is how leaders engage. Yes. Our host, Sandy Hokanson, Executive Coach and CEO of SoundLeadership. And we have a fabulous guest with us today, James Bordelus, who is CEO of Quarter. And to give you a little bit more information and background about James before he comes on, James is a successful millennial entrepreneur and founder of his own marketing agency. It's a Toronto-based agency that James has built, and he's built this business over the last 5 years, and he's built a reputation of working with leaders, particularly small to medium-sized enterprise leaders, helping them launch, grow, and drive their businesses forward. So he really knows what it's like, as he's done it for himself, but he knows what it's like to work with leaders, to think about and talk to them about, what is their online marketing strategy? How are they positioning themselves as a thought leader? Do they want to position themselves as a thought leader? How to make them more successful on social media, and are they looking for more just to build their reputation on social media, or are they looking to actually grow their business? And usually it's both things. So he's got fabulous experience. He's in the generation that is an expert on these topics, and hopefully he's going to be able to share light for all of us leaders on the phone today on this exciting topic. So welcome, James, to the circle. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Sandy. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be speaking on the Sound Leadership Circle.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we're gonna jump right in, and just as an intro to this wide topic, I just want to say, since the topic is quite large, and we're going to break it into two segments. So the first one we're going to talk about is personal branding and thought leadership for leaders. And the second area is, how do leaders get a business return of investment for sales leads or referrals or new business? And I think that will be helpful to the group to kind of deal with one first and then the other.
Perfect. I agree.
So James, great. So let's dig into the first area first, personal branding for leaders. And the first question I have for you, and this was something I was told a few years ago. I was sent over to Hyper Island, which is a thought leadership for social media and for all new media in Sweden. And what they really were trying to tell us was, just jump in, the water's fine, just get in, just do your thing, try it out. So what do you do? What do you suggest leaders do either before they start on social media, or if they've already started, what do you suggest leaders do to restart their efforts on social media as it relates to personal branding?
Yeah, absolutely. So starting with, where do leaders start before they start on social media, and then after talking about what can they do to restart their efforts. So in my experience, when discussing with business owners or VPs or young professionals getting started in branding themselves online, I usually find it worthwhile to break the conversation down into two parts. And usually I find the first part is discussing what is possible with personal branding through social, and then to talk about their personal goals and figuring out what's going to fit with their goals. And a great place to start with this is to discuss the idea of filling a role online. So in most industries and in most online communities, there are already going to be pre-established roles that leaders can fill within their community that are going to already be rewarded online. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. So when we talk about getting benefit out of personal branding on social media, very often we talk about this idea of wanting to be seen as you mentioned, thought leaders or expert, or someone who's informed, or someone who's maybe an educator or a connector, an advocate. These are all not just things that people aspire to have associated with them, but when you dig down into it, they're all roles. They're actual positions that people can hold and give back to their market through that role. So if you think about, or one thing I'd recommend starting off with is consider the different roles that are already existing in your industry. This idea of being a thought leader or an expert or an educator, and take a step back and say, well, what would an educator do? What would a thought leader do? What would an expert do? And that will start to help you shape your social media strategy and the types of content and the types of articles and videos that you may want to be producing online. The other thing to acknowledge about these different roles is that each of these roles are going to already come with benefits and drawbacks. The types of things that you're going to be able to glean from your social media presence if you act as an educator are going to be different than those if you're positioning yourself or acting as a thought leader in your industry. So oftentimes when I'm starting off with someone who's completely new to social media and branding themselves online, I say, take a look at the different roles that you can play in your market. Take a look at what people are already doing. Figure out the type of role that you want to play within your market. Think about the type of benefits and the outcomes that you want to get out of that before you even start. Then once you have a sense of the different types of roles and the benefits you can get out of these roles, then look at yourself. Figure out what's your personal goals for branding. Are you doing this to get certain types of there's obviously all the wide kind of reaching goals where people say, oh, I want brand recognition or reach, or I want to build trust, or I want to have a certain position with the market. But really nail down if there's specific outcomes that you want. If you're trying to get sales, if you're trying to build leads, if you're trying to get opportunities for yourself, whether they be media, PR, interviews, speaking engagements, really try to come into at the very beginning of your process, figure out what you want to get out of it, because then you could figure out how to leverage the role that you choose to take and the content that you produce to get those things. So that would be if someone's completely new, hasn't started at all. I would say start with figuring out the different roles that you can play, picking a role and making sure that that role fits with your overall goals. For those who've already started, I feel it's actually quite similar. I feel like a lot of that is overlap. If you've already been posting and you need to do some cleanup, just do a quick Google about like how to improve my LinkedIn profile, how to do an audit of my social media presence. You're going to get all the regular stuff like make sure you have consistent headshots, make sure your bio is nice, make sure that you don't have any junky photos online. There's lots of materials out there in terms of the ways to clean yourself up. In general, it's worth doing. It takes like 2 to 3 hours just to do that one-time investment. But for people who are already investing, take a step back, make sure that you're aligning yourself to a specific role that you want to play within a market first before you start producing content, and that will really help you put together a solid strategy.
That's great. So many of us that have jumped in may not have that figured out. So it's a great point to actually think about what you want to accomplish. So good advice. A lot of people are encouraged to write blogs. So I'd just like to hear your opinion on this. What value does writing a blog have for leaders, and how often do you suggest people blog?
Yeah, absolutely. So to kind of hark back to the first question, I think you got to start with your goals, right? You got to figure out what you want to get out of your social media presence and brand online. Is like in a vacuum, will writing a blog be great for you to brand yourself as a leader? Absolutely. Blogs are extremely high benefit. They're great for driving traffic. If you do have ultimately, if you're trying to get objectives out of if you're trying to get speaking engagements or you're trying to try to push leads down the lead funnel, blogs are super great for that. They're great for associating yourself with keywords. They're great for showing that you're a leader in an industry. But that being said, it's always going to be a trade-off of time. So assuming you are trying to build a brand for yourself online within a specific target market, how often should you blog? If your goal is to build your brand in your existing circle of influence, like in your existing warm leads and connections, let's just say you're going to do this through LinkedIn, probably monthly is fine. If you're just trying to brand yourself to the people that you already know and make sure that they know that you're an expert within the industry, monthly is fine. Every kind of step you're going to want to go beyond that immediate circle of influence, where you're going to friends of friends, or you're going to industry connections that you may have a tangential relationship, but it's not a direct relationship. You're going to have to produce more often, mainly because to those people, they don't have any vested interest in learning about you because you're just a stranger. So the farther you move away from your circle of influence, the more regular you would, if you want to build your brand through blogging, you're going to have to do it. I'd say at the least monthly, if you're going to have like a medium kind of branding campaign, bi-weekly, like twice a month. And then most people who are investing heavily in their personal branding online, weekly is what you should be your target.
Okay, wow. So, right, a lot of work. So, how much time then should leaders expect to allocate to social media for personal branding?
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so I think this is a big trap I think a lot of people fall into. You really shouldn't be spending your life absorbed in social media all the time. Especially, I mean, I'm speaking to, we're both speaking to a platform of leaders here. People don't have a lot of time to invest and allocate every single day. My real suggestion is that if you're trying to build a professional brand for yourself online, you should treat it as if you're going to write a president's message to your company. You have to treat it with the same kind of respect as if you're doing any other sort of marketing campaign. And my recommendation for doing that is once a week, you're going to just take 2 hours. You're going to write all your posts for the week. And then I would really recommend using some sort of scheduling software. Hootsuite is a great option. But again, it really does depend on what your goals are at the end of the day. If you're trying to brand within your personal network, that would be fine. Putting out a post a day or a post every other day at the very least, you'll get some traction, and you will start to build a brand if you're staying on brand towards that role that you want. But if you do have goals of building your brand to build a business for yourself, or building your brand to build a position within the industry, I would really strongly consider getting some help, working with an agency, because very quickly you're going to have to be more and more strategic about the type of content that you're producing, the complexity of the content that you're producing, and how much effort you're going to put into it. Yes, does that answer the question?
Yes, that's good. And so 2 hours, kind of 2 hours on your own, and then if it's more, you're suggesting getting some external assistance. And even 2 hours for busy leaders is a fair bit of time. I could add that to my coaching, my coaching for how to find time for social media.
Absolutely.
Okay, so really good information. So, and I really liked your point as well that leaders could find it waste a lot of time, or unproductive time. That's a better phrase there. Unproductive time with social media, getting caught up in reading too much, or feeling like you have to like everyone's post.
Absolutely.
So
I didn't.
What,
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say I didn't mention the liking and sharing and commenting, and that's all extremely important. Though if you are trying to build a brand beyond your circle of influence, I'd say really set aside only 10 to 15 minutes a day in the morning where you're going to do all of that work. Really try to limit yourself in terms of the time you're going to engage with social media, because it can, scrolling through feeds is not investing in your brand image.
Excellent. Good reminder there. And I like the idea that you group the time, take the time daily, but group it and limit it. So one thing that a lot of leaders that are on the phone today, got some entrepreneurial leaders, but some leaders that work in larger organizations. And I know this happened in even organizations I led, is how much do leaders work on their own on social media, or how much do they need to work in conjunction with their marketing teams? Again, assuming that they're in a larger organization. So can you talk a little bit about, the work between marketing or versus just kind of doing it on your own when you're in a larger organization?
Absolutely. This is a question I do come up even a lot just with clients. It will come down to personal preference as well as resources. There's no absolute truth about should you involve your marketing department or not. I think it is worthwhile to acknowledge that there are, depending on how much you involve your marketing department, or how much you just involve your company in general, you're going to have very different brands online for social. So if you're look at a spectrum, on one extreme, you could be like the absolutely you. It's strictly you and your skills and your personality. It's not your company or your business at all. And then if you move a little bit more towards the middle, you can have building recognition or association through a topic. So this can be more trying to brand yourself as a thought leader or expert within an industry. So you may still be commenting on your company or about the things that you're investing in, but it's still going to be very broad from kind of like an industry influence. And then you can move to being a face for your business. You can be a person who's constantly posting about the great achievements of your business and your team's involvement, and it can still be from a leadership perspective. Or you can go the full extreme, which is your social fully becomes the business's social. As you move more and more towards the business, just acknowledge, again, just keep your goals in mind, acknowledge the kind of readership and viewership that you're going to be investing in with each of those. And I don't think there's a true option. It really comes down to your goals. If you do have a marketing department that has a strong social media team, it doesn't hurt to at least talk to them. It definitely would be worthwhile to sit down with them and figure out the types of content, because they could even just help you source content that's even just industry related. So that can help a lot.
Okay, excellent, great. Okay, so we've kind of covered some preliminary thoughts on personal branding and thought leadership. Let's move on to social media with a business return on investment. Obviously, as leaders, we're always looking to tie any use of our team's time to make it as productive as possible and drive referrals, etc. So what do you recommend leaders take into account first when looking at using social media for business gains?
Absolutely. If social media is going to be a primary marketing medium for your business, you have to treat it with the exact same like rigidity and respect and strategy as you would any other marketing campaign that you're going to run. As such, like you should always start off by, profiling your customer, understanding the customer's buying process. So figuring out the types of information that your customer's buying journey, figuring out the types of information that they're seeking out, where they're developing trust, what's the buying process, and then very strategically, you should be using your social to create content that pushes your customer along that buying journey. So one way I find, or one really useful resource I find to do this is, going back to Marketing 101 and going to AIDA, like AI in action. So for a corporate social media, for doing social media for business, I think it's really worthwhile to align your customer's buying journey to each of those kind of profiles. So what types of posts are going to create attention and branding for our business? Which one are going to develop interest and help the customer understand that they have a problem? What types of posts and content are going to create a desire for the customer to take action? And then action. What types of call to actions can we include in our social media campaign? And my recommendation is to be really strategic. Always start with your budget at the end of the day. Make sure you have strict KPIs in terms of understanding what you're investing in and what you want to get out of it. And like any sort of marketing campaign, because social is not usually a one-time thing, make sure that you're tracking your KPIs and that you're working with your team to develop it month over month. Because you're going to have to make iterations and changes, and it's just another resource to, it's just another way of getting in front of customers. That's what you should think of social. It's just like it's like someone signing up for an email newsletter. It's just another way of talking to them. It's like writing them an email. So figuring out how to write the right emails to generate sales, basically.
It's good. It's such a great reminder to put the client first and look at the customer's buying cycle and their business cycle. And you said, I think you used the term customer journey, and so putting your customer first and how you're going to engage them. So it's a good reminder. Sometimes, again, we're jumping in thinking, this is going to attract customers when really we don't know that. And so start with your customer and what you do know about your customer. So that's great. Is one vehicle or one platform better for business than any others? I mean, there's so many different ones. I know for myself now and in my own business, I mean, you've got LinkedIn, of course, which is a very professional platform, but then you've got Twitter, and you've got Facebook, and you've got Instagram now for a lot of, in particular, smaller businesses. But there just seems to be so many. And I mean, I was just now people are reaching out to me from Alignable. There's just so many different platforms, and I think it can be overwhelming for leaders and certainly for business owners as to which vehicle to use.
Yeah, I mean, is there a difference between the platforms? Absolutely. Which one should you invest in, or should you invest in multiple? When people are starting off, it's usually just good recommendation to pick a lane and stick with it, especially if you're starting with a more limited budget. There are definitely benefits to being accessible on multiple platforms, mainly because generally each platform is only going to have a certain percentage of your audience that's going to have crossover. So if you can get, even if you have a reach of 100 people, if you have a reach of 100 people across 4 different platforms, the chance that those are going to be overlap is going to be pretty slim. In terms of which platform to choose, the 2 things that you should consider always is where's your customer, and then also what type of content does this platform reward. You can use any of the platforms to brand yourself and build. Again, this is different, going to be on personal branding versus business branding. But on the personal branding side, all the platforms are going to be okay, but you want to make sure that your readership or your viewership is going to be where you want it to be, or the platform that you're investing in, as well as you want to make sure that you're going to want to produce content in the format that's most palatable for that social media. Twitter, the types of content that does well on Twitter is very different than the content that does well on Instagram. Same thing with Facebook and LinkedIn. So figuring out the content that you like to produce and then making sure that aligns with your platform, but always go to your customer first.
It's so true, right? I mean, Twitter lends itself more to a conversation style. I always find people really like to stir it up a little there and have more questions, Q&A, and so you really do have to think about how you want to engage them and where your customer is going to be and how they're going to buy. So great advice. So you mentioned strategy a few times. You mentioned strategy in really developing your goals for your personal branding, and you definitely mentioned being strategic when you're thinking of return on investment for business. And it's kind of interesting. I don't know if all the leaders, even on the phone today, would really think of, if you ask them how they're approaching it, if they would really think they're being fairly strategic about it. So how much strategy do leaders need to really employ for their approach to social media for business success?
For business success, I would say extremely strategic, because you need to really align every piece of content you're producing for social should be for a reason. Everything that you're sharing, every video that you're producing, and same thing with your content strategy. You want it all to align to your customers' buying journey, so you can nudge them down the funnel. Social generally is at the very top of the funnel, where you may reach a customer where they're not even considering the buying process yet, and so the nurturing time is much longer. And so the content that you're going to produce on social to keep them engaged, but also move them down the funnel when you need to, you need to be pretty thoughtful about that. That's for business success, because I think just in general, when you are trying to brand yourself to to a market that already knows you, you don't have to work very hard. But again, the farther you move away from that circle of influence of those people who are already invested in liking you, the more strategic you have to be, because they don't have any vested interest in listening to you. They don't care about you, right? So when you're just trying to reach out to a random person in your industry, what's the hook? Like, why are they going to engage with you? And the farther you move away, the more value and the more thoughtful you have to be about the content you create and the kind of investment you put into it.
Great. Yeah, great. I really can't say enough about my takeaway, even all the times we've been talking together in preparation. It's just the strategy that goes behind us. And obviously, particularly when you get into buying any marketing support or buying ads or buying, you would put that same amount of strategy into any other vehicle if it was an exhibition or a show or, any other marketing event. And we need to practice the same way in online marketing and social as well. And particularly if we really do want to advance ourselves, either our image, our thought leadership, and or for referrals. So that's my big takeaway here from this, and many other really good tips. We're going to open it up for some questions now, and I've already got a couple that have come in. I'm just going to just go out here and just see if there are any other questions that are kind of coming in and have been brought in. I'm going to ask the first one, and then if anyone else online does have a question, you can unmute yourself once we finish this first question and jump in here. So one thing that came to me when we were talking, and someone has sent this in as well, so it must be on leaders' minds here, is important. How important is it for leaders to develop their own content versus, either getting their marketing team, insourcing it to someone in their marketing team, or outsourcing it to someone like yourself? How important, how much of the real person has to be in the information that they're sharing?
I always recommend, even if you're going to hire an agency to work with you, you want to have your hand in just about every piece of content that goes out the door. I think it's incredibly important because especially for the people on the call today, you've spent your entire career building up a name and a reputation for yourself, and the content that you're going to produce on social on the daily is going to be an extension of that trust and that relationship that you've built with your cohorts. So you want to make sure that you're not the one who's spamming Facebook and producing noise. You want to make sure that every single piece of content you produce has value, and that a really great way to consider if you're producing the right type of stuff for social is when you send that post, or when you share that image, or when you post that video, would someone say thank you? Would someone say thank you to you for what you just did? Because if it just sounds like noise, people are gonna unfriend, they're gonna unfollow, they're gonna unsubscribe, and you're gonna leave a bad taste in their mouth, right? So I know that was a little tangential, but you said, should you do it yourself? And I think the answer is it's important if you have an agency that you still stay involved. But again, the more you want to grow your brand beyond just your immediate circle of influence, the more value it has to sit down with a strategic partner to help you say, okay, we're going to try to get you in front of 2.5 million people in Toronto by the end of the next 2 years. How are we going to get these impressions? How are we going to build these relationships? Where do you want to grow? That they can help you do that in a way that's true to your brand and true to yourself, and that you're not going to, just be spamming off entrepreneur.com articles all the time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great, and I really appreciate. I really like how you said that people should have a hand in it and be true to themselves. And one other thing that I just thought of when you were answering was just how important it is for people to really understand the articles that they're sending around. I read something recently where it said most people don't even read the articles that they send around. They're just forwarding them around with a comment. They haven't even read it themselves. And I would think that would get you into trouble if there's something in the article.
That is extremely true.
but you can see how that could happen, right? And perhaps you trust the person that sent it out and maybe you haven't read it. So I really think it's great that you're advocating that leaders really kind of keep a handle on their reputation and their own contribution to their thought leadership. That's important. I believe that's really important. Okay, great. Let's open it up and just see if there's someone else. I've got another question that's come in, but let's just see if there's anyone else there that wants to jump in here. So as we said earlier, jump in, the water is fine. Just unmute yourself.
Hi, Sandy and James, Brad. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yep,
Yes,
we can hear
Brad,
you loud and clear.
I can hear you. Yep, go ahead.
Awesome. But it's a great conversation. Thank you very much, James. I've taken a lot from what you've already said. I'm
Thank you.
Just jumping in, and someone who I feel like social media is not as second nature to me. And looking at the other side of it, these are great things to do to build a brand. Looking at the other side of it, what are the primary pitfalls that you would recommend that I watch for as I maybe build a minimal footprint just to be there, but something that's not going to be detrimental to my brand?
Great question. Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, pitfalls. Don't write the my first blog post, never post again. That is consistency. If you're going to, there's a couple of things. Don't rush into it. Take some time to really do some like self-reflection, some self-auditing, and really spend that time. I think we talked at the very beginning, figure out the role that you want to play in the market, figure out how you want to be helping people in your industry, and like put that into almost like a vision and mission document for yourself. Like set your guiding principles of what you want to be. And then I would say start small, start with like 3 posts a week. Write them ahead of time, and spend a bit more time. If you're going to be sharing content, spend a bit more time curating and pulling together some really insightful commentary on it. When you're really starting off, you don't need to be like hammering out every single day. If you're focusing on a smaller brand, just focus on a couple times a week and really produce high quality content. The pitfalls would be too much, too fast, or low quality content, especially because your network, if you're doing it, for example, through LinkedIn's not as bad because people don't sign in as often. But for Facebook, for example, if you go from no post to posting every single day, they may just unfollow you because this is very different than what you did previously. So you may want to like slowly work yourself into it. So is that all right?
Yeah,
for an answer.
My approach had always been less is more, but it wasn't. And your point around consistency really helps me to play into that, to really understand what that could mean in a practical way. So thank you very much.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for the question.
Great. Thank you, Brad. Any other questions? Okay, I've got another here, James, for you, and this will be probably our last question, or we're going to be just on time. And this is more of a money question, a budget. I left the money question for last. I don't know if that was a good idea or not. But what is the average budget for a small business leader to advance or so? Or just even if it's not a small business leader, even any leader that's on the phone, even they just want to advance their own social media and get some outside help. What would be a reasonable budget for someone to consider?
Yeah, totally. Okay, so there's going to be, if you're going to spend money on social media, you're going to spend on one of two things. You're going to spend on either someone producing content and managing your platform for you, or you're going to be spending on promoting. So building brand recognition, increasing your reach, or increasing your conversion rates on your posts. Those are different things. So in terms of producing content, if you're going to be hiring outside help, if you're getting strictly content from a agency that's just helping you produce a few posts, but they're not managing it at all, expect at least $500 to $700. That's like the cheapest you're going to get it. Similar, if they're going to manage any sort of social media platform for you, expect at least 1,000 a month. That would be on the low end. If you're looking to build a brand where you're posting every single day, smallest kind of agency investment that someone's going to offer you is probably going to be around 2,000. Or they're going to be, that may be two platforms, but it's going to be around $2,000 a month. That's if they're posting each day for you. In terms of the advertising budget, again, you need to go back to your goals and really set your own KPIs and where you want to develop your reach. I think if you start just with one platform, starting with boosted posts is never a bad place to start. $5 for each of your posts is a great place to go. Expecting to spend about $150 minimum to just like get your content out there. It also depends on your already existing following. If you have a larger base following, like if you have 1,000 connections on LinkedIn and you really aren't worrying about growing it, you're just trying to brand to your existing market, you're not going to need as much advertising for outreach, but maybe you want to spend it more on conversion. So I would say from an ads perspective, at least 150 a month. I like most of the businesses that I do work with are spending about 1,000 a month between social ads and either pay-per-click that are supported by social like campaigns. And yeah, most of the businesses that we're doing social for, so yeah, around 2,500, 2,000 for a basic kind of setup where we're taking everything off their hands. So those would be some numbers.
That's very helpful. You've given us kind of the low amount of just boosting your social media posts, about 150, to kind of more agency and really working on a multiple streams and having a plan for two-ish. And I think it's fairly reasonable relative to other marketing investments that people make. And the other interesting thing about social and online marketing is that the KPIs and the return is I think a lot easier to quantify because there's so much analytical information that you're getting from that immediately. You can see, anyone that's touching your information and clicking through or going to your website, et cetera, and obviously trying to convert. See, you're teaching me. I'm even using some of those words here. That's perfect. So yeah. That's good. So that was very, very helpful. So thank you. Well, thank you so much, James. It's been such a pleasure having you with us, and I hope everyone feels that they've got a little bit more understanding of the commitment that it would take and the way to approach social media for thought leadership, for your own branding, and then also for return. You've really given us a lot of food for thought. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Sandy. To move on. Oh, I was just going to say thank you. I feel I'm very honored to be asked to speak as part of a Sound Leadership Circle, and this is a excellent resource for leaders. So it's very humbling to be asked to speak. So I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Great. And James and I put together just a couple, again, follow-up slides here for everyone. So some of the things just to keep in mind for everyone on the phone is when you break it down into your personal branding and business ROI. So under personal branding, remember what James mentioned around determine the role you want to play. What are some of the roles that you want to play, or what is the role you want to play on social media? Know your why. Why are you? Define your goals. And consider the size of your circle of influence. I think James mentioned many times to us, are you trying to maintain the circle size, or are you trying to grow it? And your strategies will change and your actions will change depending on the answer to that question. And then from a business point of view, it's just like any other kind of marketing spend. So set your sales targets, set your budget, define your customers, how they buy, what their buying journey is, and establish where social fits into the lead funnel. So to get them eventually to convert them to new clients. So some reflection to leave you. I always like to leave you with some reflection. Again, what will you take away from this session? Is there a role for you to play in social media? And what are your personal goals for branding? And are they tied separately? Are they tied to the organization that you represent, or are they personal? Are they personal brand goals that you have? And are you approaching social media in a professional way, in a strategic way, or are you just passing time? We just touched a little bit on how much time can be spent on social media in an unproductive way. So think about that. And just also, is your social media footprint setting you up for success on where you want to be down the road? And how are you representing yourself online? That's also very good food for thought there. Our next Sound Leadership Circle is Wednesday, October 23rd at noon. And Mr. David Alexander is going to speak to us on ethical leadership. So I can't wait for that conversation. And just a reminder to all of you, please invite any of you that are members to be an actual circle speaker. So please just reach out to me if you would like to consider that. I'd be pleased to speak to you about that. There is a membership page on my website, so don't forget that as well. And I look forward to seeing you next time on the circle. And to James Bordelus, CEO of Quarter, for joining and sharing his expertise with us today. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.